is still in a growing mode, that they can get some guidance from headquarters and from other chapters that have worked on similar programs or had similar experiences. So what we're doing with the Chapter Leader webinar program, and we're launching it today, we hope this to be a quarterly program that we're doing for chapter leaders, not just for chapter presidents, but the entire leadership of the chapters. So we'd like to encourage presidents, vice presidents, directors, treasurers, so forth that are in chapter leadership positions to participate in these. And the other thing we're doing, because I know this initial program was put together fairly quickly in the last few weeks, and a lot of people might not have gotten sufficient notice on it, we'll be recording this webinar as well as future webinars and sending them out afterwards to the same chapter leadership distribution. So if you have leaders in your chapter that weren't able to get involved in today's program, they will have access to this information. So the first program we're doing today, as far as how to host a successful chapter conference, and some of the other topics we've talked about as ideas for future programs with the leader webinars have included things like liability insurance information for the chapters, assistance with tax advice, how to establish a chapter website, how to develop a scholarship program for a chapter. So these are all things that have been done by certain chapters, but not by all, and hopefully from the best practices standpoint, everyone can benefit as they embark on those new areas of activity themselves. So with that introduction, I'll pass it back to yourself, Sean and Phil, to start the program.
Hey everybody, hope everyone can hear me now. And thanks for those of you who stuck around. It looks like we're right back up to the number of attendees we were before, so that says a lot for you folks. My name is Phil Friday. I'm with Harrington Group in Atlanta. I used to be, I've made my way through the ranks of the Greater Atlanta chapter and served in all the positions up through chapter president in 2006, and have since inherited and adopted quite happily the role of a conference committee chair for our conference committee, and we're on our going on our 10th annual fire safety conference coming up next month. The dates are March 10th, 11th, and 12th if anyone's interested in attending, and we can send a brochure out to you. But we're really excited about the event. Again, it's been an event that's evolved and grown over the years, and of late, we typically have roughly 300 attendees, 40 vendors, 40 to 45 vendors that are there, and we're able to generate some income for the chapter that ultimately gets distributed out to the universities through our scholarship program. So with that, I'll get right into the meat of our presentation. What we wanted to share, we thought might be most beneficial to this audience, was what is the process for kicking off and making a large conference or local regional conference like this a success. And so we want to sort of walk through the steps and just have a brief outline. We're going to talk about the committee itself, which is the cornerstone of the success of the conference. We'll talk about the planning meetings that occur and the monthly activities. Of course, we'll talk about marketing, talk about some of the window dressings, the bells and whistles that we think make nice additions. I want to let you look at how we do the financials, both the budgeting as well as the look back, and talk about some of the keys to success. So the most important thing, as I said, is having a conference committee, having a strong group of people to champion the effort. To give everyone a sense of scale, the Greater Atlanta chapter here is, I think, roughly 100 members strong. It doesn't mean that everybody's active. Everyone probably has experience with that. But so each year, in the early process, so we get our process, the conference planning process started in around August. And by the way, the conference is in the following March, so roughly 8 months. We reach out to the membership and ask folks who want to participate in the conference committee. And So year after year, we've had about 20, 25 people on the conference committee. We typically meet twice a month. Starting in September, we meet the second week of September. Meet at someone's office, make it a lunch meeting. What we've done here is met on Fridays at noon, or Fridays from 11 to 1. Every other Friday, brought in pizza to feed the committee members. That always gets them there, and then sit down and kind of hash out all the details depending on what time, where we are in the process. And the most important thing is having someone that's a champion of the whole effort. And in that regard, here in Atlanta, Dan Arnold, some of you may know, really was the vision and the champion and cheerleader and behind getting the conference here, both off the ground and making it a success year after year. So you need someone who's got a passion for educating others, who's got a passion for networking, and has a passion for making things happen. And so we wouldn't be here today if it weren't for that individual, and here that happens to be Dan. Getting into talking about what we do month over month. And by the way, this is in the upper right-hand corner. You'll see myself on the left and Dan Arnold on the right. And then last year's keynote speaker, that was Chief Ron Coleman, who's the former state fire marshal for the state of California. Many of you on the West Coast may know Ron. He's a great keynote speaker. First thing we do is develop a budget. Like any good business, we want to make sure we don't end up looking back and going, well, how did we not make any money? And so we develop a budget, and it really helps to keep everybody on task throughout the rest of the planning process. So when you're talking about how much are we going to spend on food and how much are we spend on rooms and space, and how much can we afford to pay speakers that absolutely require to be paid, and so forth. That budget is really a good thing to be able to look back on and have as a backing. And so of course we have the planning meeting. It's kicked off. We schedule it, and here it's selecting a venue. For us, it's fairly straightforward because we continue to have the meeting at the same venue. As you see in the upper left-hand corner, that's the Gwinnett Center. Adjacent to that is the small arena where the local amateur hockey team plays, the Gladiators. But it's a good venue, and you'd have to select a venue in your area where it's easy access via airports, and the local folks could get there easily. And the very first thing we do is start to develop what we call the program. And for us, we look back at the prior years. We look at the speakers that we had. We look at the attendance in those classrooms, and we kind of cut off the top 10 or 15 and say these courses or these speakers were really well attended. If everybody's interested, let's try to get them back. If you're doing this from scratch, then it's and I remember back to when we were doing it from scratch. Each year it was a brand new brainstorming session on a whiteboard. Who would everybody in this room be interested in hearing talk, for 70 minutes or 60 minutes or whatever your sessions turn out to be. So again, the main focus continues through the second month to be program development. It's a pretty big effort reaching out to folks, getting them to commit. We're looking to get commitments, hard commitments by the end of October. There's some soft room in there through the end of November, but you're coming up pretty quick on needing to get a brochure together and a hard program so that you can send it out and really start to sell the conference. So that's what we spend our focus of month 2, which here is October, getting speaker commitments. When some of the ones that we want or that were suggested in a meeting fall through, doing some more brainstorming. And then another important component is setting up an electronic registration interface, or in other words, setting up a website so you can take online registrations. I think that's essential in this day and age. When we started it started doing this in 2004, we also believed it was essential, but I think there was some willingness to try to do it the old-fashioned way and have people sign up on a brochure and mail it in. But we were able to get a website together that first year, and we've been able to continue to enhance that over the years. And the last thing we do is to start to assign subcommittees. So people to go out and market to exhibitors. Exhibitors, or some might call them vendors, to companies to say, hey, do you want to get a booth? We also keep a list of those companies that have gotten a booth in the past, and so they're the primary target audience, and then have a brainstorming session about what other companies out there might be interested. Assign subcommittees to do marketing. How are we going to market this? Are we going to one of the big things that we do is send out what we call e-blasts. So they're weekly emails. We ask SFP International, and they graciously oblige to put the conference in their newsletter. And what we've really started to push this year is asking folks to reach out to their individual networks via LinkedIn, Facebook, and those kinds of places. And then we have a subcommittee for travel. And what we do with the travel is make sure someone coordinates both hotel rooms and rides back and forth from the airport for our speakers, and as well as attendees. Month 3, so we get into November. We're aiming to finalize the program. We call it our grid. We're trying to fill out the grid and make sure all the classes are filled, and that we have quality programs. And then we start, at the end of the month, we start sending out save the dates. So there's no real information about who's going to be at the conference. It's just save the date. These are the dates for the 10th Annual Greater Atlanta Fire Safety Conference. And we start putting the brochure together. And maybe this is a good time to show you just an example of what our brochure looks like, so you sort of have a sense of what you might do or consider doing. We used to do this on our own, but what we have, bring this over here, what we've done more recently is hired a firm to develop this for us. And so this is I guess you'd call it a quad fold that goes in the mail. The address goes here, and then on the flip side of this is the actual program. And I apologize, the PDF viewer that I'm using right now doesn't show the top banner, but there's a top banner here with some additional information. And so you can see we have the program outlined, and there's some specific details so folks can really look at this and go, hey, yeah, this is something, I want to go see this, because of Sam Beal's, hands-on fire pump testing class that's given, or whatever it happens to be. So that gets us through the end of November, or month 3. Months 4 and 5, which is December and January, a lot of people are taking vacation in December, so that's why there's the big push to try to finalize as much as we can by the end of November. But we're trying to clean up loose ends with speakers in the program and make sure start testing the website. I remember one year, going through a battery of testing on Christmas Eve with the website, because that was the only time our programmer could do it. But those kinds of things that you're doing to just kind of make sure that you're ready to take registrations come the beginning of the year. So finalizing the brochure, proofing the brochure, and then sort of doing the same thing in getting into February. This is when the registration should be active. If it's not, then you're working on really making sure that the website's ready to go, that the registration brochures have been mailed, and you should start seeing some registrations come in. And this is when you really start, the nail biting starts, because you've got a budget, and if you don't have attendees, you can't pay for everything you've committed to pay for. So the last month, and I think I got ahead on the months here, but month 7 is February. Month 6 was January. We really start talking about some of the details at the venue. What are the AV needs? Do we need lapel mics for the speakers? Do we need just podium microphones? What kind of, do we have enough projectors? We found that we can save quite a bit of cost by having the local engineering firms all bring their projector and use it instead of paying the venue for that kind of, that kind of technical support. Making sure we have power for all the booths, which is part of the exhibitor setup. And then starting to talk about both speaker prizes and giveaways. And then one of the things that we've done here is a raffle where we have a bunch of prizes. We try to make them something that folks really want, like an iPad or a TV or something like. And then smaller prizes, of course. And then we have a sign-up form where people, as they go around to the different vendors, if they get 70% of the vendors checked off, they can enter into this raffle, and at the end of the raffle, they can win one of these prizes. And it seems to be a good way to point an otherwise introverted crowd to the vendors. And then, of course, the conference's program's finalized and printed. And so the program's different than the brochure. I always get confused about this, but the program is what you actually hand out at the conference. People use it as their guide to find their classroom. It's got advertisements from the local engineering firms. It has advertisements from the exhibitors and just information about the conference itself. Do we have our brochure? I think we wanted to show you what that looks like as well. Again, not trying to advertise the Atlanta conference, but just show you what some of these documents look like. Well, this is another thing I meant to mention. This is the vendor advertising piece, and so we put a piece together. And, we developed the pricing. These are actual real pictures from our conference, and this is what gets sent out to the local sprinkler companies, fire alarm companies, local and national. We have firms that come from Canada to get a booth. Come from all over. It talks about what we use the money for. We start to advertise our golf tournament as well, and we have some pricing breaks for vendors that might want to go ahead and buy their golf tournament sponsorship. Just those kinds of things where you can try to build on the momentum of what you're doing. And then a map of where the vendor booths are located, so they can. For the first year, we actually created zones for the vendors after 10 years of feedback, and us kind of saying, you're going to go here and you're going to go here. We said, well, okay, we'll zone price this, and we'll have a premium zone, which you see are these the blue tables, and then I guess we call it non-premium. And that worked out really well. These premium spots fill up really, really quick, I think faster than they ever had before. So that's an idea. It took us 10 years to learn it, but if you were doing this thing from scratch, you could do it right out of the gate. Month 8, which is what we're coming up on now, and we're all starting to get nervous. You can probably hear it in my voice. It's do we have enough people registered? Do we have enough vendors that have tables? Are we going to make our numbers? We're not going to be sitting in an empty conference center without people there, are we? And so the very last thing that we do, this is typically done the Friday before the actual conference, is we do a walk through the venue with the committee. The committee's been broken up into subcommittees, as we talked about earlier. One of the other things, and I think I probably skipped over this, is the committee is also assigned as speaker managers as well. So, each individual committee member gets assigned to a speaker, and they're responsible for everything about that speaker, making sure they get to the venue, making sure they have all the information that they need, making sure their travel plans are finalized and so forth, and just sort of being a good host to the speakers, most of which are coming from out of town. And so on the day of, the conference committee helps assist with the exhibitors as well. Wear a different lanyard so that you can be identified, and folks can come ask you questions about where their classroom is or what they need to go to do this or that. Again, the idea is the conference committee sort of acts as the ushers and the host for all the people who are attending And then the last thing the speaker managers or session managers do is actually introduce their speaker in the classroom to the audience. So once the conference is over, issue everyone a professional development certificate, and those, of course, those mean different things in different states. We don't have really the ability to go out and get certification for CEUs or some of those things that really require more rigorous, they follow a more rigorous protocol in order to obtain credits for. We just issue professional development hour certificates. And we find that's been, most of the engineers need those. Get into looking at some of the licensing requirements in most of the states, and they talk about professional development hours or contact hours, and it being up to the engineer to determine what's appropriate. I'm not saying that's true in every state, but that's what we see in a lot. We send a survey out. One survey goes out to attendees, and the other goes out to exhibitors, and look at that feedback and try to figure out, well, what can we do to make this a better event next year? We send out thank you letters to the speakers, and we hold a debriefing meeting to find out what worked, what folks worked, and kind of what hiccups there were, and to celebrate the fact that we got through it with all our hair, or maybe only losing a little bit. And then the other thing we do, and this may be coming up here, is, well, the other thing we do following the conference is, we go out and try to get any expenses that were incurred. We try to encourage folks to give us their time for free, but that doesn't always happen, and that's not always a reasonable thing to ask for, so we do have some budget money aside for travel expenses and so forth. But, for the consultants, if they can work it into some other trip, or if we can get them to do it on behalf of the chapter or behalf of the SFP International, that always helps things. Don't forget the marketing. Again, this year, one of the big pushes, and we've went through a lot of iterations of how do we get the message out. And the conclusion we've come to, and I don't know whether this conclusion is right or not, but it's the one we came to this year, is the best way we're going to get the word out is through our own personal networks, and we've really had a push on trying to let people know through either personal emails or LinkedIn updates and things like that. And on the personal emails, the committee members would send out an email to a group of architects they know and blind copy the committee, and so the committee can kind of see, another committee member's idea about how to push the conference, or maybe try to focus those particular recipients into one aspect that they may be interested in, and try to gain momentum that way. And it seems to work pretty well. It requires a lot of championing and reminding and so forth, but we think it works pretty well. And then trying to get folks to embrace social media. And it, for engineers, I think probably the most common avenue that's used would be LinkedIn, although we do some stuff on Facebook as well. And then we look to other professional associations that might be able to get the word out for us. For example, the American Fire Alarm Association has helped us push the conference. Of course, they've got one of the courses is sort of sponsored by them this year. NFSA, AFSA, NFPA, the other organizations, if you can get them involved somehow, a lot of times you can take advantage of their marketing network. And then some of the little things we add, we've added to the conference. I hate to call them, the window dressings or bells and whistles. Last year, we didn't do it this year, but we had a new technology showcase. It was a day long, and we got 4 vendors who had some new technology they wanted to talk about sign up, and it was an all-day seminar on the first day. We actually used to do this as a 3-day. We started it out as a 2-day conference. Then it morphed into a 3-day conference. And this year we've gone back to the 2-day conference as a result of our analysis of the numbers. But as part of those 1-day sessions, we had a new technology conference, and that was pretty successful. We didn't do it this year, but I'm sure we'll bring it back. We do a welcome reception for speakers and exhibitors, and so it's after the first 1 day long of classes. After the exhibitors have presented, we set up a bar and set up some tables and bring out some food and let everybody network and mingle, and that's been successful as well. And that happens right in the middle of the exhibit hall, so people are right there where the exhibitors are. Gotta have gifts for your speakers who've come out of town, maybe giving you their time for free, and try to negotiate hotel rates for guests out of town. I told you we have giveaways and raffles at the end of the conference to try to point people towards the different exhibitor booths. This picture on the right is actually from the welcome reception, and that's always worked out pretty well. And always make sure you feed people if you invite them to an event. So I think that's one of the cardinal rules. At least that's what I've been told. And then we have a happy hour at a local restaurant when the conference is over, and that's always a fun event as well. So got a little bit more time here, and I certainly won't go over, but one of the things we do each year is review the past budget and look for areas to improve. So what I thought I would do is bring up our budget numbers from the last year's. There we go. Yeah, so sort of do a proposed and actual analysis. Of course, it's a spreadsheet, right? And we look at how our numbers were. So this is the last 4 years, and then this is what we used to develop our budget for 2014. And if you just to kind of go through this quickly, if you look at the net income numbers at the bottom, I hope you can see these. You'll see in 2010 we did really well, and in 2011 we also did really well, and then all of a sudden, whoa, what happened? We only made $10,000. Where you can't give out as much in scholarship money if that's all you made. And then last year we did really bad, and so this year there was a focus on what do we need to do in order to get back to where we were. And I think what we found out was, we had just made assumptions that things were going to continue to be like they were in 2010 and 2011. We didn't need to worry so much about controlling costs because, hey, we've done this already. We've done it 8 years or 9 years. And I think what we really found is, and 2012 and 2013 are examples of just what happens when you're not minding the store anymore. One of the examples here is last year we gave out, gave out $3,500 $4,600 in prizes, and it's like, well, how did that happen? It's just one of those things where we just weren't, we just thought, well, we have that kind of money. So anyway, got to watch and make a budget and stick to the budget. So one of our things this year has been focusing on trying to stick with this budget and making sure that we do right by the committee and by the chapter. So did we go backwards? We did. We went backwards for some reason. Stand by for 1 minute. I'll fix this. Okay, so that's our financial review. Conclusion, some of the keys to success as we wrap up here. Leadership. You really have to have a group of dedicated folks, and it does take effort, and dedication and passion and all of those things in order to make it successful. Of course, goals and planning, these are they're just the basics, but you got to set goals, and you've got to plan, and you've got to have a plan, and hopefully this presentation, which you can will be able to download, is sort of gives you a roadmap for how to do the same thing if you choose to undertake it, and then follow through. And that's one of the tough things for a bunch of busy consultants or engineers or whatnot is keeping everybody, making sure everybody follows through with the task they're assigned. And so we actually have a person, she's sitting here with me right now, who's assigned to remind people of the action items they have, and I get an email daily saying, hey, these are the things you said you were going to do. Have you done them? And so, on the car ride home or on the car ride in, I make sure I take care of some of the things that I need to get done. Something else that we think is key is venue. Find a good place, build it, they will come, that whole thing. And then, I think what's even bigger than venue is if you make the programs interesting and enticing, technical subjects that folks want to hear about, speakers that folks know are good speakers, and then you will draw the attendees. That's all I have. I look forward to any questions, both in the next couple of minutes that we have left, and certainly welcome to reach out to me via email or LinkedIn or what have you, and we'll be happy to help you in any way we can.
Thanks, Phil, and thanks again for bearing with us and presenting some stuff twice because of the technical difficulties, and I thank everyone for staying on the line. We do have a question here. Somebody wants to know, do you use a registration website service, or is it through the chapter's website?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. We have not yet used a service. We built our website from scratch, and when I say this, I want to encourage everyone: do not do the same thing. We built it from scratch. We've had multiple programmers get involved. We tried to do things very economically, and it has come back to bite us. So, I would strongly recommend that you hire a company who can develop a merchant-type website, a secure merchant-type website that, and of course you want to look for someone that can do it cheaply, but, if you got a committee member whose son-in-law is a programmer and needs something to do, that's not what happened with us, just using that as an example. I don't advise going that direction. I would find a company to do it, and we are planning to make that change in the next year.
Thanks, Phil. Does anyone else have any questions? If not, you can contact Phil directly or send any questions my way, and I would be happy to forward them on to Phil. JC, would you like to say anything before we close?
Thanks, Sean. Just thank Phil for his presentation and wish the Atlanta chapter a good success with their conference again this year. It's a well-established conference, and we appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us today, Phil, as to what you've done to make it as successful a program as you have. And as far as these chapter leader webinar programs going forward, as I mentioned at the outset, either through Sean or through your chapter support council members, because we're going to continue to try and facilitate these as an extension of the chapter support council. But if you have ideas for future subjects, I mentioned some possible subjects early on today that we were thinking about, but certainly if there's things that you and your chapter leadership need guidance and need help on, chances are if you need some help on it, other chapters do as well, and it would be a valuable subject to talk about. So feel free to give us those ideas, and we will look forward, staying on a quarterly basis. That would take us to around the May timeframe to try and launch the next program. Thanks, Sean.
Sorry, I was muted there. Phil, we actually have one more question for you. Does the chapter involve other local organizations, like maybe fire alarm organizations, fire marshals as co-sponsors?
Could you repeat that, Sean?
Oh, yeah. Does the Atlanta chapter involve other local organizations as co-sponsors? I think we might have lost Phil, but I'm happy to follow up with him on that question. Like I said, I think that was the last question, and I just thank everybody for attending and sticking with us through the technical difficulties, and hopefully our next chapter webinar will be sometime in June, and we'll get back to you on that. So thanks again, everyone, and have a great afternoon.